Today I'd like to share with you a little bit about the sacroiliac joint. A few thoughts I've had, a few musings, if you will. This joint is so important, and it's such an area for people that can get very tired, fatigued, it can be weak, and it's an important joint because it's the one place on either side where the whole spine connects to the pelvis. So there's a lot going on here. The sacrum is kind of like the mediator between the rest of the spine and these two sides of the pelvis called the ilium. And so to be able to have a little bit of movement for us to be able to walk, for us to be able to sit and stand, and being able to use our spine in relationship to our pelvis. Otherwise, we get to be kind of a big block between here and there, and there's not much movement at all, which can also happen. The thing I think it's important to remember is that this joint really has 3 different dimensions that it can move in. And they are very small ways that we move this SI joint, some of us more than others, depending on your body. But it's so important to remind the sacroiliac joint of its ability to move front to back, side to side, and rotationally. And when we can be in relationship with all of those dimensions, we just have happier SI joints. So I want to share with you a couple of quick movements. We're going to do part of the series standing, and then the same exact movement lying on your back. So you can choose which one feels better to your own body. If any of these movements are painful, then again, we just want to imagine the movement happening. And as you set up the imagining, that sets up the energetic pathway for then the structural pieces and the more dense part of our tissues to begin to follow eventually. So let's begin. I'm gonna show you with this pelvis is that we're going to be moving the pelvis back and forward here. And then my model doesn't do it because it's glued together, but shearing of the hips up and down. So we're getting that side to side movement of the SI joints. And then the last one is kind of a rotational movement. So here is what it looks like. The first movement, and you can also do this one in a chair, is that rotation. And I'm trying to think about my pelvic bones rolling back as if there's a wheel that's rolling back, and I'm tucking my tail under. And then I'm going to roll the pelvis forward as if I'm rolling that wheel forward and moving my contents of my belly out into the front space. So you can check out what range of motion feels good to you in this movement. I'd make sure that your knees are bent. And again, it may feel more comfortable lying on your back or seated in a chair to do these movements. You could also place your hands on your knees for a little more support and do the same, tucking the tail under and then reaching the tail out. And a lot of times if I'm having pain in this area, I might try to imagine that I'm underwater so that I'm not struggling muscularly with kind of doing the movement and pushing or pulling the pelvis to get into that right place. But I'm simply exploring this range of motion in a very fluid way. And that definitely changes the compression that sometimes I feel at those SI joints. So that's our first dimension. The second dimension is a little bit of a shear. So you could do just like I'm doing, of lifting one heel and then lifting the other to bring that one pelvis higher, one side of your pelvis higher than the other. You might also use a yoga block or a stack of sturdy books or maybe a stair. Hold on to something so you feel balanced in this position, and then let that foot drop towards the floor so you're sinking in this supporting side hip and then coming back up. So that's one way to work that side to side movement. And then of course, we might do the same on the other side, dropping one side and then the other. For some people, this may be too painful, so it might be enough just to hold this position, and that can help also strengthen the area around the SI joint. Some of these are explorations. but they're also strengthening moves. Another way to work that side to side range is by simply moving your body over to one side, almost like a starfish, and then shifting your weight and gently move to the other side. And again, this is a great one to do in front of your kitchen countertop or a table, so you have a little bit of support as you reach over and balance. So I'm getting this movement through my SI joint around that femur or that thigh bone as I shift side to side. And again, this is pretty strengthening. I'm realizing already, like, oh, can be fatiguing for those little tiny muscles around the SI joint. And then the last one is a bit of rotation. So for this one, I'm going to bend my knees and lift one heel up off the ground, similar to what I did on the yoga block, but now I'm rotating in this plane, this transverse plane around the pelvis. Rotating the pelvis around, I should say. And then you might check out lifting the other heel and rotating again. And I'm breaking it down into these 3 dimensions just so you can notice, oh, maybe this dimension is one I'm not as familiar with, or this is not a move that's easy for my body. And so we can begin to explore, but if that feels like, I'm not sure how to do that movement, Jessica, then just play. So maybe you bend your knees and your tailbone is reaching out, drawing little circles behind you, or doodling with that little puppy dog tail back there. And in that doodling, the hope is that you're getting a lot of different ranges of movement through those sacroiliac joint spaces. And then you might, after doing that, take a little walk around your space and notice how your legs are moving, how your function is between your spine and your pelvis and that whole area. So I want to show you the same thing, now getting down to the floor. So we'll move down to a comfortable place on the floor. Make sure that you are propping your head up if you need a pillow or a little bolster behind your head to make your neck comfortable. And in this position, I'm going to start exactly the same movement that I did standing, but now lying down. So the pelvis is doing that roll to the back and then a roll to the front. I'm arching and tucking my tail back and forth. And again, sometimes I can do this very muscularly and it can be a very lovely abdominal exercise, but that's not really what we're doing today. We're really going for the mobility and the ease. And sometimes I feel like pretty lopsided when I do this, but as I continue to do it fluidly and effortlessly, I generally find that my movement gets a little easier, I glide a little bit more. There's a little more range of motion without any pain or discomfort. So stick with it and notice as you're going, how can I take the efforting out of this movement so that we're really feeling that kind of underwater, weightless feeling, moving from the fluidity of the SI joints and the pelvis and the contents of your lower belly, as opposed to muscling it, right? You can kind of see the difference there. That's kind of muscling the movement. And we want to find the ease. So that's our first movement. You can stay with that as long as you like. The second movement is that side to side. So helping the SI joints feel their dimension change and shift in this plane of movement. So I'm going to reach one hip up towards my lower ribs as I reach the opposite side down, or you can just stay with one side. Coming back to center, and then I'll reach the opposite side up towards my ribs as I'm taking the other hip down towards my feet. So I'm trying to move in this plane up towards my ribs and my ear and down towards my heels. Back and forth. And you may find that you go further in one direction than you do in the other, but that's okay. Stay within your range of comfort. Try not to push this. And I think sometimes we get into the like, oh, hurts so good kind of efforting place as if we're doing a stretch. This is not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for those little micro movements that keep the nerves gliding and keep opening up the space in the sacroiliac joint. So that's the second dimension. And then we'll add the third dimension, which is that rotation. So for this one, you might try kind of lifting one hip up towards the ceiling and the other down to the floor, and then switching one hip up to the ceiling, the other down to the floor. So I'm kind of mirroring with my hands what these little micro movements of my pelvis is doing. And if you wanted to do a little more strengthening part here, you could elevate your hips just a little bit and do that same movement, shifting your weight a little side to side. Something that I notice as I'm doing this exercise is that it can feel a little glitchy, like the joint isn't quite oiled up. But the more that I begin to do these micro movements, I start to notice there's a little bit more ease. And then similar to what we did standing, you could do a little tailbone dance here and combine each of those dimensions, combine each of those ranges of movement, and skirt around the edges that might feel painful or uncomfortable, and simply move in the areas that feel easy and fluid. And keep reminding your nervous system and your body what that ease feels like. And gradually you may find that you have more and more movement there in those sacroiliac joints. And then again, when you're finished, I would let it settle. Maybe placing your hands on your low belly, taking a few deep breaths, letting the organs settle back towards your lower back and your sacrum. And then when you're ready to get up, make sure you do so gently by rolling to your side, maybe taking a breath or two here, and then using your hands to gently bring you up to a seated position. I hope that you've had fun exploring those SI joints. I know mine feel so lovely right now. I hope yours do too. Thanks for being here.